What's up, everybody? I'm Coach PJ. Today we're going to go through some neck training exercises and why it's important to incorporate neck strengthening into your training program. Neck training and neck strengthening is not only important for athletes, but also for general population as well. So some of the benefits of neck training, number one of the biggest benefits of strengthening the muscles of the neck is prevention of injuries. Strengthening the muscles that control the cervical spine and that structure and protect it are going to help protect from falls, from spinal injuries, from spinal cord injuries, from day-to-day life and in athletics. Number two, strengthening the neck will help correct poor posture that's very, very common among adults these days. We see a lot of the extended forward neck posture from people who are on the computer all day long, and we see a lot of poor posture from people texting all day long, hanging their head down. So when I hang my head down in this text position, the force on my neck musculature and on those structures is magnified extensively from just the weight of my head. So if my head weighs about 10 pounds just sitting here, as I start to rotate my head forward, the more forward I lean, the more weight is going to be, and the more force is going to be acted upon those structures. It's going to be magnified up to 6 times as much. So if I've got 10 pounds sitting here, as I lean my head forward at about 60 degrees, it's going to be about 60 pounds of force that's going to be holding up. So strengthening the neck can be really important for preventing these different head postures and head positions. For athletics, strengthening the neck is really important in the concussion reduction, in reducing the incidence of concussions. There's tons of research coming out now about strengthening the neck to not only reduce concussions, but to reduce the impact of subconcussive forces, which is repeated over and over head trauma that's not at the level of concussion, but the subconcussive forces that built up over time, happens a lot in football and boxing, can cause a lot of long-term brain damage. So strengthening the neck can really help to prevent the impact that we take in those type of sports. And then in sports that like the athletes I train, like combat sports, strengthening the neck can actually be very beneficial for resisting as we're getting pulled on, we're getting pulled in different directions, keeping posture and helping to resist in different positions in terms of being choked, or using my head position in my wrestling in order to gain a dominant position. So I'm going to go through some of the basic beginner level exercises in this part 1 video that I like to use with my athletes. The first one is all body weight, and we're working on endurance of the neck muscle. So not only keeping proper alignment and posture, but building up some endurance of the neck musculature. So I got to give Rob Schwartz credit for some of these first exercises we're going to go through over at the US Olympic Training Center. I know he does a lot of this stuff with his boxers, and I learned this, some of these exercises from him. So the first one's in this neck progression. I go in a supine position, and you could do this on the ground or on a bench. I go with the feet up on the bench so that I can get a neutral spine. So I get neutral hip position, my spine is nice and flat to the bench, and my head is hanging off. I want a straight line from the top of my head down through my tailbone. I'll put my hands on my chest, and the first one I'm going to do is protraction and retraction. So I'm going to pretend like I'm pushing my nose and mouth straight up to the ceiling. My goal is to keep my head in the same position and just move straight up and down without tilting my head forward and back. So this is what it looks like. And I'm going to go nice and slow, controlled motion the whole time. And what we'll do is we'll gradually add time. So I start off at 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and build up to 60 seconds to 90 seconds of slow, controlled reps. And the gravity pulling down on my head is really what's going to work all that neck musculature, and it's a very small range of motion. When you start off with people, typically you're going to have to teach them just to be able to control and understand what that range of motion is. So sometimes I'll start them on the ground just because it's a little easier from a teaching standpoint. Then I'll flip over, I'll face down and do the exact same thing. Same position. This time I can put my feet on the ground. My head's hanging off, and now I'm going to be pulling my nose and mouth away from the floor, like I was trying to put the back of my head up to the ceiling. So just reversing what I was just doing. tell people to think like they're trying to make a double chin. Pulling their head back, not tilting down, but pulling their head back like they're trying to make a double chin. So those are the first two I start with. From there, I'll add in neck nods. So now we're going to actually start tilting the head. So this one I like to tell people, think like they were saying what's up to their friend. So I'm tilting back, tilting my head slightly back and just elevating without really flexing and extending my entire cervical spine. So we're trying to, I also tell them, pretend like there's a bar right here through the top of their cervical spine. And that bar is where I want to be doing these nods and rotating. So same position, laying on my back, feet are on the bench. My head is in that neutral position, and now I'm just going to tuck in. And then I'll flip over, and I'll do the reverse. So again, we're just going to build those up for time. I'll usually mix in one or the other. So day one, my fighters might do the protraction and retraction. Day two, we'll do the nods. And we'll continue to add time as we progress, really working the endurance of those neck muscles. You'll notice you might be weaker on different sides, the forward or backward. So sometimes if I notice a significant difference, we'll do a little bit more on that side. Particularly when it comes to the nods, you'll notice a lot of weakness in the front of the neck muscles here because we get this extended position all the time. So working on strengthening that musculature to pull that head back into a neutral position is really, really important. The next exercise I like to use in my phase one of my progression is isometrics. Isometrics are really, really good for training the neck because the musculature of the neck is really designed to help prevent movement in the cervical spine. The cervical spine is not really designed for a ton of movement. It's designed really to resist movement. So I got a lot of musculature here that's designed to help hold all this stuff in place. So when I'm doing isometrics, I grab a partner. I got Coach Justin here, and we're going to do a 4-way isometric neck. So most important thing here, again, is my posture and my alignment. That has to come first in all of these drills. So I start seated on a bench. I'll usually put my hands down on the side so it can help hold myself into position. I'll brace my core nice and tight, and I'll sit up tall, making sure I have my chin slightly pulled back so I'm in this neutral head position. And then we're going to start off here. Coach Justin's going to start from the side. I like to do this facing a mirror so that I can watch and make sure my head stays in the right position, and if I'm in Coach Justin's position, he can watch and make sure I don't start to lean or compensate as he's starting to push. So he's going to go with his arms straight, right up against my head. I'm going to make sure I get locked in a neutral head position, and then he's going to slowly add pressure until we get to a good tension position. If he gets to a point where I start to break, then he knows he's put too much pressure and he's going to reduce it a little bit. So he's going to get to a point just enough where there's good tension, and then I'm going to hold that position, clenching my teeth together and maintaining this head position, and he'll give a count for I usually start off at like 8 seconds, and then we can build up to 15 to even 20 seconds under tension. And then I'll usually go 2 times in each position before I rotate through. So we go from the side, we'll just do 2 seconds here. He's going to go and drive in. 1, 2. And then we'll relax, making sure he gradually adds pressure and gradually reduces, not jerking into my head. Then I'll go from the back. Same thing, driving forward, making sure I'm pressing the back of my head into his hands. And he's going to gradually add tension. 1, 2. Then he'll do the other side. Then he'll come in front. When we go in front, if you watch from the side over here, because this is an area people are typically very weak, normally, especially a lot of my fighters are really, really strong in the back side of their neck, but very weak in the front here. It's very easy to allow this pressure to pull my head into this position. I talked about earlier how this is a posture a lot of us have anyway. So we really got to make sure we're keeping an eye on this chin position and head position
So as he adds the pressure, I don't start to compensate. So go ahead and drive. 1, 2. So I got to make sure I maintain that neutral head position and don't start to compensate and let my neck lean forward as he's pushing into my head. So again, if you notice areas, I don't do a lot of the backside with my fighters, especially wrestlers, because they're so strong from years and years of getting their head pulled down. They're so strong in the back, and they're way weaker in the front. So we do a lot more on the front side than we do on the back. But I like to do 2 times around, and that's 1 set. And again, we'll start off at 6 or 8 seconds, and we'll build up. Not only will build up to increasing the tension, but we'll build up the time that we're doing that up to 15 to 20 seconds for each one. So that's the 4-way isometric neck, and I did my prone and supine body weight neck exercises, which we had the retractions and protractions and the neck nods. So that's the phase 1 neck training and neck strengthening.